is Ryan Cam, and welcome to my spoiler-filled video, my spoiler corner, if you will, for Captain America: Brave New World. And I know this movie has been out for a week and some change now, so this video is not surprising, but this is not going to be a blow for blow kind of video. This is just going to be me elaborating on some of the stuff I liked and a lot of the stuff I didn't like. So, spoiler warning. If you've seen the movie, please continue watching. I do appreciate it very much. If you haven't, do go see this movie before you continue on with this video. I will be talking about quite a lot plot-wise, and if you don't want to know, please click off. I have a spoiler-free reaction in the eye in the right-hand corner. Do go check that out. I suppose the biggest spoiler that I can recall is that, well, it took 16 years, but we finally got a sequel to this. Took them long enough. This movie is pretty much The Incredible Hulk 2, and it's, I think it's a rights battle that's why we haven't gotten a standalone Hulk movie for as long as some people have been alive, but pretty much most, if not all, of the DNA from the Incredible Hulk exists in Brave New World. You got Thaddeus Ross, this time played by Harrison Ford, because William Hurt is sadly no longer with us. The main villain of the movie is the leader, aka Dr. Samuel Stearns, played by Tim Blake Nelson, Mr. Green from The Incredible Hulk. Even Liv Tyler reprises her role as Betty Ross. She only has one scene, two if you technically count a phone call, but she only has one scene. And honestly, I was there for it. I liked that they finally closed off some of the loops that were left wide open with The Incredible Hulk. The Incredible Hulk is one of the weird curiosities of the MCU. I really enjoy it, but there are some others that just straight up don't like it. I've always had a soft spot for it. It came out the same year as Iron Man, and Iron Man has gone on to receive wide acclaim, while this movie, being The Incredible Hulk, people have to be like, that was a thing? When it indeed was. Like Hulk is pretty much a side character now at this point. Like if like he's either teaming up with Thor or fighting off Thanos. Like he hasn't had a standalone movie in a decade and a half. And that's just bizarre. It was genuinely nice to see Tim Blake Nelson back as the leader. However, his CGI and design are genuinely horrendous. Just for context, here is what the leader is supposed to look like in the comics. And if I can find a screen grab, here is what Samuel Stearns looks like in this movie. He looks like he looks like Alan Rickman from Galaxy Quest, but like dipped in pickle juice. And like it's been discussed, the Red Hulk is not in the movie super much, and they do try to paint around why that is the case, because it's alluded to in Civil War, not alluded to, but straight up said that pretty much General Ross had to have a quadruple bypass on his heart. And I was like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. But then, more or less, that was actually a bit of a cover because Ross was dying. He enlisted Stearns for help, and then Stearns got did dirty. So that just painted Ross in not the best light. No idea what Harrison Ford's involvement in the MCU going forward is. The man is like Harrison Ford is getting up there in years and he's got other things he's doing. He's in that 1923 show, but I hope they bring him back. I mean, Secret Wars is what they're building towards, so I sincerely hope that Harrison Ford is around to see it. Also, in terms of lore, they finally they finally addressed the Inhumans, well, specifically the Centennial, the big old thing coming out of the Indian Ocean doing the Undertaker pose, or Booker T, depending on your vintage. But I'll say, as someone who was not a huge fan of Inhumans, I thought it was pretty boring. I'm finally glad they acknowledged the Inhumans because the MCU was better when Most, if not everything that happened was canon, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. notwithstanding. Remember that show. At a certain point, you have to just look around and go, has no one addressed the fact that there's a big old thing just doing this in the middle of the ocean? And it's the big crux as to what all is going on here. There's this big treaty going on. And I'm just glad that anyone finally said, we should get around to that Centennial thing eventually. The addressing of lore and going back to older stories and closing off those loops and saying, we said we're getting to it, now we're here, we're getting to it, and we're moving on. That's both the blessing and the curse of the movie because the Incredible Hulk stuff and the Inhuman stuff were legitimately pretty interesting to me. Everything involving Captain America was not so interesting to me, and that is not necessarily Anthony Mackie's fault. Like I said in my spoiler-free review, I thought he was good in the movie. He is very clearly trying, but I feel like they were trying to recapture some kind of a spirit of Captain America the Winter Soldier when you can just never recapture that magic ever again. There's like this whole thing of General Ross is not being as honest as he says he is, to which I say, well, duh. I mean, the dude made it his life's mission to hunt down Bruce Banner for, allow me to check my notes, dating his daughter. I'm sure there were other things involved in there somewhere. Not to mention that Ross created the Sokovia Accords, breaking up the Avengers. He basically Yoko Ono'd the Avengers. And so there was this conceit of like, Ross is a changed man, but he's really not, though. When I'm old enough to remember that General Ross is someone who is just not to be trusted. So they were doing this whole will he, won't he, that just was not necessary. Like, why couldn't he have just done the, hey, my fellow Americans, like, put on a political face and then behind the scenes, just a leopard does not change his spots kind of situation. That part was frustrating. And I think my last big thing I want to talk about spoiler-wise is the reshoots. And I won't go too deep into why they're so bad here. What I will say though is that making a making any kind of CGI or visual effects is really hard, so I don't want to jump down the throats of any VFX artists out there, especially who worked on this movie, because Marvel Studios have not exactly had the best reputation when it comes to VFX artists, and there are articles out there that talk about that. That being said, though, it is very obvious at certain points, especially when characters stand directly across from each other in what appears to be CGI backgrounds and communicate a whole bunch of dialogue to each other, like mini exposition dumps strategically placed throughout the movie to where it just streamlines everything along. And unless you're really looking for it, like it shouldn't be too much of a hindrance. But I've seen enough movies to know where the plot runs along pretty smoothly, and every time it's either Cap or Ross or someone like, say, Giancarlo Esposito's character have to stand more than likely in front of a green screen set and be like, a couple years back, I discussed this man, and just sitting there like, I wonder if there's an entirely different version of this movie lying on the cutting room floor. There's gotta be. And it's not a case of you can edit any movie to be any kind of genre. It just really comes down to the editing room. It really is a case of I know there's lost footage of this somewhere, and I feel like that just needs to be there. I just want to see Seth Rollins in this movie somewhere. Like he said he was going to be in it, but then he just straight up said, I'm not in it anymore. So, in terms of structure, the movie feels like it's very much held together by bubblegum and scotch tape. That being said, though, I still liked it because there are genuinely some really good moments here. Sam Wilson accepting Joaquin as the new Falcon has a nice little mini arc in there at the beginning of the movie and where it closes out at the end. Captain America has a great moment with Bucky Barnes, I did not expect to see him here, but I'm glad to see Sebastian Stan. Turns out he's a congressman now? Shows what I get for not watching the Disney Plus shows, but it's nice to see him. There's just there's little mini moments like littered throughout where I'm like, you got something here. But there's a lot of other stuff going on that just kind of kills it. Not to kill my overall enjoyment of the movie, I still liked it, but I just felt largely disappointed with good chunks of this movie. And it's a shame too, because I said in my spoiler-free reaction, the Captain America series is usually the standard for quality, and this is easily the worst of the Captain America standalone stuff. It's not out and out terrible, not worst I've ever seen, just not particularly great either. It's serviceable. I do have some hope for Secret Wars. It feels like that's what they're building towards, especially with Fantastic Four on the horizon. But I sincerely hope that this solid base hit leads to something more. I have a, I'm crossing my fingers. I have a small glimmer of hope. What was your favorite moment of Brave New World? I'd like to know. Let me know in the comments. I would love to read what you have to say. My name is Ryan Cam, and I'll see you in the next one.